bad days.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah, good. So the first question, how did it all start for you? Was showbiz a massive part of your career, or like growing up as a kid, was it a massive part of your life, or was it something that stumbled upon accidentally?
No, it really started right way back when I was about 10. Started playing the drums as a little boy, just probably was 8 or 9. And then my mum got me a ukulele. And my dad had always been a guitarist, a bit of a guitarist, not very good,
Yeah.
but he was a great lover of music. So he got me this guitar that was used to be his, and he sorted it all up and everything. So that was my very first guitar when I was about 10 or 11.
Okay.
And obviously right away showed that I had some sort of aptitude for music. So it really was right at that very early stage that I could play guitar solos, because the shadows were the big thing at the moment. And he got me an electric guitar, and then I started performing as a 12-year-old in concerts and competitions, and I won a few competitions, and it all led on from that into, then my dad said, why not try singing along with it? So I became a singer guitarist, or as they called it in those days, a git voc.
Oh, okay.
It started booking me into clubs even as a 13, 14-year-old. And that was quite amazing, to be out doing social clubs at that time of night, because they were quite rowdy places in those days, the
Yeah.
working men's clubs. But I was still out there doing that, and it gave me the most incredible grounding. It meant that I was working, even as a 14, 15-year-old, 5, 6 nights a week. I was making more money than the teacher was making, so
Yeah.
it was a good life I had.
And do you remember that first time you knew stage? Do you remember what it was like? How you felt at the time?
The first time, what? Sorry?
Do you remember the first time you ever went on stage to perform? Do you?
Well, the first big time in front of a big audience was in a place called the Barrowland Ballroom. And that was in Glasgow. And it was quite a rough dance hall, but it was a competition I went in for. And I got to the final of it. And one of the prizes was giving me a 10-week stint there. So every Saturday afternoon, it was a kids' afternoon show. I would go along and I'd play, and I had a big orchestra. There were a 16-piece orchestra behind me. So that feeling used to be, I was very, very painfully shy in those days, painfully shy.
Yeah.
So my dad couldn't understand how I could hide in a corner and then all of a sudden walk out on stage and hold an audience for 10, 15 minutes in those days.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting times. And it's, you wouldn't think you'd be able to remember a 10-year-old or 12-year-old, but I've got photos of me on stage as a 10-year-old or a 11-year-old, and I can look at it and it brings it all back to me immediately.
Is it nice to look like when you look at where your career is now, like, and what you've done since then? Is it nice to look back at these photos and then think back to the last however many years you've been in industry and think how far it's all come? Does it kind of make you
Yeah.
appreciate it a bit more? Because I think,
Well, I mean, I do appreciate it. I couldn't have had the life that I've had if I hadn't been in show business. I mean,
mm,
at the age of 16, just or 17, my dad said, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in show business? And I said, yes. He said, well, you've got to have something to fall back on. Dads and mums always said that, something to fall back on. So I was about to go into the GPO, which is BT. That was where my dad had worked. And I was about to go and do that. And I got a letter from them saying, start on Monday. I'd passed the test. Start on Monday. Come and collect your protective clothing. So I said, what's that? I said, well, it's a donkey jacket and Wellington. So I said, nah, Dad, come on. I've been wearing a dinner suit for the last 6 years. I'm not going to start wearing a donkey jacket and Wellingtons now. So he said, okay, we'll give it 6 months, see how it goes. Well, within 6 months, I was earning 3 times what I would possibly be earning at the GPO. So it was, yeah, okay, 6 months became a year. And then after that, it was your full time in show business.
wow.
So I do look at it and think, wow, it's been an incredible journey, really, really long, lots of ups and downs. I mean, the one thing that my dad said to me right at the beginning was, and I don't know how he knew it, but he said, you're in for a lot of
Yeah.
disappointments and you've got to be able to weather that. And I did. I just went through it, and one thing would happen and you'd say, oh, well, that's it, it's all over. And then all of a sudden something new would come around the corner. So it was an incredible life. Yeah.
I suppose that's the thing about show business. From the outside, when you're looking into it as an audience member, it all looks glamorous. But then when you're in it, the glamour goes away, and it's actually a really tough industry. And trying to get
It's a very tough industry. I
yeah,
mean, I've watched my son and my daughter both in it, and my daughter had been in the pop business for 10 years. She's doing really, really well. She'd had a couple of hits early on. She had a Universal recording contract. So she had been doing everything that was right, doing all these big sessions, recording with great people, but never actually cracked it in the pop world. So she pivoted, as they say, into the musical theatre world now. And she's now almost starting again. You know, she's got a new agent, she's out
Yeah.
auditioning. So that shows you how hard it is. Doesn't matter how talented, she's unbelievably talented.
Mm.
But just hasn't had that break in the business. But I mean, we know that you've got to keep going. You just don't give up in this business. Never give up. Keep going.
Yeah.
My son, the
So
same. He was 10 years of battering his head against the wall with recording and writing, and then all of a sudden hit it big, and now he's one of the biggest producers in the world, you know?
wow. And so the club circuit is sort of disappearing now. It's not what it used to be many years ago. Would you say doing the club circuit was a way of honing your craft and kind of perfecting you as a performer? Would you say it allowed you to do that?
Definitely, definitely. There was no better learning ground because a lot of people of my age that started out went into theatre and they would
Mm.
do maybe 6 or 7 minutes on a theatre show down at the bottom of the bill, and then they'd work up a bit up the bill and they get a 7 or 8 minute spot. I was out there doing two 45-minute spots. So I had a very strong act by the time I was 17 or 18.
Mm.
So when I went to Blackpool for my first stint when I was about 19,
Mm.
I could hold an audience with an act that had everything in it. It had comedy, it had big ballads, it had patter, it had jokes, it had routines. So I had learnt all that in the clubs. And you knew you had to be good in the clubs because if you went out there and couldn't hold them, they'd just start talking, they'd be drinking, they get up and they'd move around, and you knew you'd lost them. So
Yeah.
you had to have, I always remember my dad would look at me from, because he took me to all the clubs, everywhere he would take me, he'd look at me and I know he'd be saying to me, do Babyface. And Babyface was the song that always got them. And I knew he thinks you're in trouble, do Babyface, you know? So you learn these things. You think, okay, change it at a drop of a hat. Got to change the act because I'm losing them. And that's just something you learn by experience.
And growing up, was there anyone that you looked at in the industry that inspired you, that you kind of took elements of what they did and incorporated it into your act?
Well, again, when I went to Blackpool, I was just a singer. I was a git vok, as I said. I was a singer, comedian-ish, not so much comedy. I always had the guitar on, so I wasn't doing stand-up, but I was doing little comedy songs and things like that. And then I watched a man called Johnny Moore, who eventually I did a television series with later on, many years later. But Johnny Moore was just an impressionist, and I was in awe of him. To be able to do voices was just, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And being so shy, I didn't have a good comedy voice myself. I didn't know how to do comedy in my own voice. So my dad said to me, look, do impressions and then you can do comedy. So I just started doing impressions of the comedians who were all on television at the time. There was Ken Goodwin, Frank Carson, Charlie, I can't forget his name now. But there was about 5 or 6 comedians that I actually stole their act. I
Yeah.
just did about 5 or 6 minutes of it. And it all of a sudden got me into comedy. It got me to learn timing. It got me to learn how to put gags together, routines together. So by the time I'd finished doing Blackpool, I was a comedian impressionist all of a sudden and not a Git Vok because Git Voks never got very far in the business. You never got on television playing guitar and singing. So by that time, television had started to take notice of me. That was the early 70s, 71, 72. And I was on a television show called ATV Star Time, and that was the start of my television career. And then I moved, got my own series on Scottish television. Then we got Sunday nights at the London Palladium, 1974, which changed my life completely. 26 million people watched that, so it was an amazing jump from just doing the clubs to being a television personality and actually people paying to see me rather than just walking in and watching me. They actually bought tickets to see me. So my life changed overnight with that television show.
So how did Sunday Night at the London Palladium come about for you? Because that's a big gig to get. I mean, the Palladium is one of the biggest venues in the world. It must have been a
It
thrill
was,
to
yeah.
perform.
Well, I was working in Blackpool and I had a week at a place called the Golden Garter in
Mm.
Manchester. So I had a week off from Blackpool and we went over to Manchester. And Danny LaRue, who had been working in Blackpool, saw me working and said, "This boy's got talent. I've got to do something for him." So he got a man called Alec Fine from ATV to come up and see me. So he came to the Golden Garter. And actually, it was probably one of the worst nights I could ever had. It wasn't very busy. I
Mm.
didn't do as well as I thought I would. And my dad was there and he said, "Oh, we've blown it." So we drove Alec Fine back to the train station. He didn't say one word to me, just said, "Okay, nice to have met you." Got out of the car and we just both depressed drove back to Blackpool. It was really, thought, that's it. I've blown my chance. Within 3 days, he phoned me up and he said, "We want to put Alan on a show called Studio Star Time." And that was the first network show for ATV, which is now defunct. And that happened. That I did well on that. And then a few weeks later, he phoned and said, "We're going to put him on Sunday night at London Palladium." Well, that was, I mean, that was just mind
Yeah.
blowing. You just couldn't
Mm.
believe you could go from having done nothing to one
Yeah.
television show and then the biggest thing ever. There's no, there's no equivalent of it now. It would have been, it was the equivalent of winning X Factor or something
Yeah.
like that. That's what it did for me. Um, so that came out of the blue. So again, it was my dad following something up and chasing him and talking to Alec Fine and saying, "What do you think?" And eventually he said, "Yeah, let's put him on it." So as I say, that came along. I got a record contract, so we had an album out at the same time as me doing the Palladium. So it all started buzzing,
Yeah.
and from that point onwards, it was STV saw that there was something happening and they got in on it and started and gave me my own series called Hello, Good Evening, Welcome. And there was three of us on it. It was like a team show.
Yeah.
So we did four series of that. Then I got my own series, Allan Stewart Tapes, then the Allan Stewart Show. So for 10 years, I was literally on television every week of life. Some network, some just Scottish television.
Was there ever a point where all that got maybe a bit overwhelming? Because I mean, it must have been a dream to finally be booking all these gigs, but I can imagine at times it must have been a bit. One minute you can't believe you're doing it, but
Um,
it must have been overwhelming.
I suppose it was overwhelming, but
Yeah.
it was almost like a natural progression for
Yeah.
me. I always believed that there was going to be a chance of me getting
Mm.
television. My dad always believed in it as well. He was clever enough to have learnt the business with me. He knew the ins and outs of it. He knew to keep me away from the
Mm.
wrong type of people, and he was always watching my money. He was very, very careful with the money, and always made sure I got paid. Always made sure nobody tried to cheat me in any way. But he was very clever, and he knew that at the age of 23, 24, after the Palladium, that I was getting too big for him.
Mm.
I had to get what would you say, a London management.
Yeah.
So at that point, I had the pick of the managements. I had international artists. I had London management, which is a big, big company. I had MEM were after me. So they all wanted to sign me up. And we
Mm.
eventually signed to a guy called Billy Marsh, who was the top manager, Bruce Forsyth, all the big names, Tommy Cooper, everybody. He managed everybody in those days. And what that did for me was his office started booking me into the theatre clubs. So I travelled round Manchester, Luton, Caesar's Palace, Eastbourne, Birmingham. All the big cities had theatre clubs in those days. So I then moved into that
Mm.
echelons of very, very big 1,000-seater theatre clubs. And that again was the next move because I then it became
Mm.
my act was English and I wasn't just a Scottish act, I was an English star at that time. So that natural progression for me, I just kind of took it in my stride. I didn't get, I mean, yes, I had girls screaming. It used to take me an hour and a half after every show to sign photographs and
Yeah.
autographs and speak to everybody. And I always spent time after the show. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
spend more time off stage talking to everybody than on stage because I knew I was building a fan base. And it just seemed natural to me. It didn't seem as
Yeah.
if all of a sudden things were changing, other than the fact that financially, I had my own, I had a brand new Mercedes, I had a big house, I had all the stuff, all the trappings. Um, but as I say, it wasn't like pow, you've gone from overnight. Like X Factor, you could do that. You could be doing
Mm.
nothing and then be a star overnight. I
Yeah.
had been building and building and building and getting this fan base going. So it wasn't as overnight for me as some
Yeah.
people could have.
I suppose you had to work for it, and I suppose that being able to kind of go from doing the clubs to doing this, it was must have not only a natural progression, but I can imagine that was an amazing feeling to be suddenly doing the Palladium, the TV, and then looking back to where you first started.
Yeah. Well, my difficulty again was,
Yeah,
as I say, I used to do 45 minutes and then another 45 minutes. So I knew how to build an audience.
yeah,
What I didn't know when I first started doing television was how to do the 3 minute spot. I could never make a 3 minute spot work. So you got a guest spot on, for instance, some Seaside Special or something like that, and they say you've got 4 minutes. And I could never actually master that in the first few years. Eventually, I found a way of doing it, which was it would be a comedy parody that would involve about 2 dozen impressions. So I found that was the way to do it rather than go on and try and doing comedy as stand up. So that was another learning curve. I had to learn how to do the short spot rather than the long spot. So that was a difficult time. And I still always think I had to say to people, look, you've got to see me live. That's where you see me at my
yeah.
best. I was never at my best on television. It was a means to getting me the bigger money and the bigger venues, but it wasn't me saying this is where I belong. I did never felt I belonged in television.
But I feel like a lot of theatre performers say the same. As I know Ken Dodd, he never really liked doing TV. He always felt like doing theatres was his kind of home, and that's
Yes.
where he felt most
Well, he
comfortable.
did 3 hours. That's why he liked doing live shows. I mean, he was out there from the beginning till they were locking the doors by the time he finished. So, yeah, that's why he loved it. He knew how to build an audience to a frenzy. And I believe I knew how to build an audience as well. But I just could never get that magic 3 minutes. And then around about 82, 83, there was a show called Live from Her Majesty's On, which was a David Bell production, which was on every week. And it was the most incredible variety show. Every big name in the world did it. You got all the stars from America would come over and do it. And I was given a spot on there. And I had about 2 months to get ready for it. So I made a big change in my life. I changed, I didn't wear a dinner suit. I wore this silk blouson jacket. I had my hair spiked. I had a different look. And I put together a 4 minute spot that absolutely stormed them. It wouldn't be allowed now. If you saw it
No.
on YouTube, what I did in those days, doing Michael Jackson and Prince and all these people,
Mhm.
and the way I did it wouldn't
Yeah.
be allowed now. But that was the 80s. And again, that was another big jump for me again, because that was there was maybe 15, 16 million people watched that. And again, that took me to a different level. But by that time, a lot of the Scottish television stuff wasn't working. And all of a sudden, along came Copycats, which was a network television show. So I did 5 years of that. That was another team show with David Bell, who was one of the greatest producers ever. So I had another 5 years, and that took me into the next level, which was summer seasons. And I toured all over the UK doing summer season panto, television, summer season panto. So it was another 10 years of that. So that took me right up to the 90s. And by the middle of the 90s, most of the television had dried up. Alternative comedy was coming in. So my style of comedy wasn't really working, and television wasn't booking me or any of my peers anymore. So that was the change again. And again, there's another, as we would say nowadays, pivot. I pivoted into musicals and I went into the musical Jolson.
Yeah.
So that was in 1997. And I did 2 years with Jolson. And I went to Toronto with it.
Mhm.
And that set me up for another kind of career in musicals.
Would you say going from comedy, where you can kind of do your own thing and it's your own craft, to then doing musicals where you're being kind of given a script and being told what to do almost? Would you say was that an easy thing to transfer to, or did you find that difficult?
Well, I was lucky with Jolson because that was my first, and it was a massive dive into a musical because it was one of the biggest musicals I could have been in. It was in the West End. It was a multi-million-pound musical. The sets, the costumes, and everything. But the main thing about it was the director was just incredible. he was with me for 5 weeks because I had to take over from Brian Connolly, so they had to sit with me for 5 weeks teaching me the part, and that's how long it took.
Mm.
And he was Rob Bettinson was his name,
Yeah.
and he went through every nuance of the character. By the time I had finished 5 weeks, I believed I was Jolson. And when I walked on that stage, I was so, I mean, I was petrified
Mhm.
as I walked to my first scene because I had to walk underneath the stage, with to go outside and come in through the audience. And as I walked that round to the front of the house, it felt like the Green Mile. I felt I was going to be hung or put in the electric chair. That was the fear I had. And then I walked on stage and bang, you were off and running. And I had a few hairy moments,
Yeah.
got where I was and had to make something up and talked rubbish to the audience, but I got through it because my experience
Yeah.
knew no matter what, I can get through this. Doesn't matter how big a mistake I make. So Jolson was the biggest learning curve of my whole career, and I put it down to Rob Bettinson being one of the greatest directors I've ever worked with. He was
Mm.
just brilliant. He did this thing which is very interesting. The first line of the musical was "Just hold it right there," and I had to shout that from the audience, and it stopped everybody on the stage. Everybody turns and looks at me. The audience all turn and look at me, and I walk on stage with this
Mm.
powerful
Yeah.
persona. And during rehearsals, whenever we got to that line, the very first line on the first page, he said, "Don't say it, Alan. Don't say it. You're not ready." So we would rehearse every line in the script, and then he would say, "Right, let's do a run. Don't do the opening line, Alan." And I could never understand. I never asked him. I just would say, "Why do you no? Just don't do the opening line." And then eventually one day he said, "Okay, you're ready now. You can do the opening line." And the reason he was doing that was I had to get this power on stage. I had to be the biggest star in the world, which Jolson was,
Mm.
before I could stop the audience in their tracks. He said, "Now you're ready." And I could just hold it right there. And the place stopped. He said, "Now you've got the power."
Mm.
And that was the most unbelievable moment because I thought, oh, he believes in me now because he didn't believe in me at first.
Okay.
Rob Bettison said, "No, I don't think he's not." See, Brian he's six
Mm.
foot. He's a powerful man. He's got a very powerful voice. I have a very lightweight voice. But what it did was my voice was much more like Jolson's singing voice, but
Okay.
the talking voice wasn't as powerful as Brian's. But with Rob Bettinson's tutoring and directing, I got that power from another source, not from the volume of my voice, but from the way I could cut through people and shut them up on stage. That was in the script, deliberately shut them up. So yes, it was a wonderful learning curve for me.
Yeah. So how did panto come about? Because that's one thing you're known for. I mean, you've been doing it in Edinburgh for a very long time. How did your first panto come about?
Well, back in '75, when the TV series was pretty hot, I was doing everything. I was doing guest spots. I was doing the clubs. I was doing theatres. I was doing everything. But I'd never seen a panto in my life, mainly because I was always working at Christmas. I was doing 5, 6 nights a week. Panto was just not in my sight. I just didn't see it. It wasn't part of my life. So all of a sudden, along comes the Pavilion Theatre in Glasgow, who had been doing pantos for beginning of time, and Jack Mulroy was there. He'd been in it for years as the star, and business had been going down and down and down, and they said we need a change. So they came to my dad, who was still doing some of my managing in Scotland, although I had a big manager in London. Came to him and said, "Would you do 13 weeks, twice nightly, 3 times on a Saturday in panto?" And I thought, wow, that's a lot. I usually do 45 minutes, and that's me back home. Excuse me. So the management in London did the deal.
Mm.
As it happens, they did the one of the greatest deals ever. They got me a guaranteed amount of money
Mm.
every week plus a percentage. Now you very rarely get a percentage in a theatre now. But the Pavilion were very happy to give me a percentage because they knew that over the last 5 or 6 years they hadn't been doing particularly good business. They expected to do a bit better because of me, but they didn't expect to happen what happened, and that was the
Mm.
business went through the roof. So not only did I have my guaranteed money every week, and my dad took great joy in working out what 10% of the percentage was, and I was making absolute fortunes in those days,
Yeah.
big, big money, and nobody else was making that kind of money in Panto. And my dad would every week say, "There's your fee. That's what you've got this week." And I'd look at it and I'd go, "Wow." And I'd see, well,
Yeah.
it's worth doing two shows a day and three on a Saturday. So that was the start of my Panto career. But I went in with a completely open mind, as I'd
Yeah.
never seen Panto. I didn't know that he's behind you and the people shouting. So I went in with a completely new idea, and they all say, "Well, no, you can't do that. That's not traditional." I said, "Well, I don't want to do it traditionally. I want
Yeah.
to do it my way." So Buttons was the first part, and Cinderella was a lovely girl called Fiona Kennedy, who I'm still very friendly with. I saw her just recently. I stayed with in Aberdeen,
Yeah.
and we did the first panto, which was incredibly successful. Successful. Second year we did another one, and the third year we did. So after 3 years, we decided to give it a rest.
Yeah.
And those 3 years were fantastic for me. But it got me to realize you do have to have a tradition in panto. Although
Mm.
my first year was,
Yeah.
I'm changing everything. Eventually, the
Yeah.
shouting and the
Mm.
throwing the sweets out and all the routines started to make sense to me. And over the years, we've done. I think our pantos now are different from everybody
Yeah.
else's.
Mm.
We don't do all the old gags. We do
Mm.
a lot of good new routines. So again, I still think it's a medium that you can get out there and really learn your craft from. And it's the first thing that kids see. You know,
Yeah.
kids go to see you, and
Mm.
that's their introduction to theatre.
Yeah. And would you say, because obviously been, how long have you been doing Pants in Edinburgh for now? How many years have you been
Um,
doing?
Altogether about 32 years, but 27 as Dame or
Yeah.
28 as Dame. And before that, I did Buttons and Jack and Wishy Washy and all these ones.
Yeah.
But I first did my first one was the year my son was born, 1989. That was my first one in Edinburgh. I
Yeah.
did that with Anita Harris,
Yeah.
and I played one of the bad robbers in Babes in the Wood, which is a
Okay.
panto that's not allowed nowadays. You're not allowed to do that one.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
But Robin Hood, that's basically Robin Hood. You
Yeah.
don't do Babes in the Wood, so you can still do Robin Hood. So that was my first one in Edinburgh. Then there was a couple of breaks. I went to Glasgow and back and forth. And then I did 92, I did Glasgow, then I did Edinburgh. And
Mm.
then 97 was my first Dame. And it's
Yeah.
been Dame ever since. I knew that once I went into my dress for the first time, that would be it. I would never go back to being a male
Yeah.
again. But I had a character which was Auntie May, which I
Yes. Yeah.
started
Yeah.
out on Scottish television in the early
Yeah.
70s. So my Dame was already there, ready to go.
Mhm.
I just had never thought about doing it before.
No. So how did Auntie May come about? Because it's what you're known for doing. You've been doing it a long time now.
Yeah, well, Auntie May was in this series called The Allan Stewart Show, and it
Yeah.
was supposed to be a club. So the audience were all sat around tables and they all had drinks. And I was the compere of my own show, and I
Yeah.
would introduce guest stars, but I also would have my own characters. So there was Auntie May, there
Yeah.
was Simon, my cousin, who was a very simple boy who would come on and chat to the
Mhm.
guest stars. And then there was the club chairman, who was my idea of the men that I'd met throughout the years in the club. All right, there, we've got Allan Stewart coming on now, and you got to give him some silence, please. This boy's good. And I'd do all that sort of stuff. So they
Yeah.
were my three characters that I did
Mm.
throughout the series. And Auntie May was the one that really clicked.
Yeah.
She one that she made me a comedian, Auntie May, because it meant that I could do gags in her voice that I couldn't do as Alan Stewart. I didn't have the what was it? What would you say? The status as a
Yeah.
comedian
Mm.
myself. I felt my voice was too weak. But Auntie May, she was strong, and she could turn around to somebody and say something, and things would come into
Yeah.
my head that would get roars of laughter, and I'd say, "Where did that come from?"
Yeah.
So I've always been able to think funny as Auntie May, more so than Alan Stewart,
Yeah.
which is
And
an
would,
interesting concept, really. I think it's like Edna Everage. I think Edna is
yeah.
much funnier as,
Yeah.
as as Edna than she ever was as herself. I think Mrs. Brown is much funnier
Mhm.
than she is as herself. And it's one of those things that you actually think differently because you're in this costume.
I think being a character that allows you to kind of get away with a bit more because you're not being you.
Exactly. It's like a ventriloquist dummy. The dummy
Yeah.
can say anything and get away with it. And Auntie May can pretty much get away with anything. Although once on stage on the Queen Mary, I came out. I'd done my show on the Tuesday, for instance, and this was me on the Thursday doing Auntie May. And I come out onto the stage, and this American stood up and he starts shouting, "This is disgusting. I cannot believe we've got men dressed as women on stage. This is terrible." So Auntie May's going bang back, and I was getting roars of laughter. The crowd were booing him and telling him to sit down, shut up. "No, I will not be quiet." So he gets up and he grabs his wife and he takes her, makes everybody stand up, and he walks along the line and gets out onto the alleyway, and he's standing there and he's shouting at me still, and I'm still coming back. I'm getting roars of laughter.
Mm.
And as I go towards him to say something, he lunges at me. And I forget that I'm Auntie May, and the Glasgow comes out, and I went, "Come on!" And he jumped back, and I jumped at him, and it looked like it was going to be a fight. The audience were in hysterics. I met a guy recently, last month, on a ship, and he said, "I was there that night that happened." He said,
Wow.
"That was my greatest night in a theatre ever." He said, "God, it was funny." So yes, there has been moments when Auntie May
Yeah.
has not been accepted, as it were.
It's a couple of years ago I started doing Fringe because I've got into stand-up comedy myself, and I've taken my own shows of Fringe, and I play a character as well. I'm not myself, and it does allow you
Did
to.
you play?
I play this sort of camp. It's kind of a budget version of Julian Clary. He's a camp
Right.
comic, kind of homosexual, um, and his idea is he wants to be Jay McDonald's new cruising partner. Um, but it does allow me to say things I wouldn't normally say. I was a lady. There's a lady on the front row. She was in her 90s, and she was loving it. And I asked her what her name was, and I said, "Oh, Pip, have you ever met Elvis?" She said, "No." I said, "It won't be long
I
then."
won't be long now then.
Yeah,
Auntie May has said that. Now,
yeah,
I would never have said that as Alan Stewart,
you know.
but you can get away with it as a character.
I mean, thankfully she loved it, and she was roaring with laughter.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
thought
they
that could
do.
have gone either way. Because
Absolutely,
bear in
yeah.
mind, it's my first gig. I'd never done stand up before. It was my first audience up in
Wow.
London at the Union Theatre in Southwark. And I hadn't sold a lot of tickets, but I didn't really care because I was like, I'm performing, I'm doing what I've always
Yeah.
wanted to do. But I was just, because I've been doing jokes for ages around friends and family and at work and that, it was my opportunity to actually do it in a safe environment,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah.
It was great. And I'm taking it back to Camden Fringe this year. I've not done
Oh,
it for a couple of years, but it is a chance to just kind of,
fantastic. That's great. But
and
I agree. I believe that's the way in, because now I do stand up in my act, and I'm very confident with it. I'm very happy with it as long as my material is strong. Um, and I do a lot of observational stuff on the ship. So that's where the comedy is today, observational stuff.
yeah.
I'm making it sound like it's real. This
Yeah.
happened to me. It could be a joke, but you wound it into sounding like it actually happened to you.
Yeah. So, having done so long in Edinburgh now, would you say the pantos have changed a lot over the years? Because there was a point where panto was on the slide, and now they've come back big time to these big budget kind of more mini musicals.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, when I first started doing Edinburgh, it was always Scottish Panto was always very, very big. And the
Mm.
very first one I did in '89, I mean, the costumes were all made specially for it. The
Yeah.
scenery was made specially for it. I mean, you couldn't do it now
Mm.
because it cost millions. But what they did in Edinburgh was they went to Edinburgh, Sunderland, Newcastle, and then back to Glasgow or something. It did a round of about 3 or 4 pantos, so they got the money back that way.
Mm.
So when I did them in the late 80s, they were still big budget pantos. And then I moved into what was Kudos for many
Yeah.
years, and now is Crossroads. I moved into doing panto with them and with a man called Paul Elliott, who was the first person to give me an English panto. Well, actually, it wasn't. It was a Toronto panto. I went to Toronto for him
Okay.
for the first time, and we did it out there. So Paul Elliott and I then started writing Edinburgh together, and he had access to all of Kudos's scenery and pop costumes and everything. So they were big budget then.
Mm.
So I've always been fortunate to have a big budget band. I mean, when we did the pavilion, talk about budget, there was no budget. We had an organ and drums was the band,
Mm.
and there was a microphone in the center which you had to run to get to do your lines, so nobody could hear you. And the scenery all shook, and there was no costumes. I bought my own costumes. It was really dodgy, but I didn't know any better in those days. whereas the King's was doing big budget in
Yeah.
those days in Glasgow. The Pavilion was doing a cheap panto, but it was a great time because
Mm.
we went from those rough pantos and learning our trade to
Yeah.
doing the big budget ones. And now, I mean, the budget for the Cinderella this year was it
Yeah.
was the Palladium set, the Palladium
Yeah.
costumes. We had real ponies, plus we had the ponies that went out into the
Yeah.
audience and flew. I mean, it's jaw-dropping the stuff that we have nowadays. This
Is
is
it a thrill to get the opportunity to kind of perform in that production? Because not many people get that opportunity. And here you are up in
absolutely not,
Edinburgh
no.
doing the Palladium set and costumes.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great thing, and I've got one, 2 more years of a 3 year contract. When I first did the first one, my manager come on and said to me, Alan, they want to sign you for 3 years, and I said, what? What do they want me to sign me 3 years for? He said they want to sign you up so they know you're going to be in Edinburgh for 3 years. I said, well, I don't fancy that. I'd rather move around the country. He said, look, take it. It's money in the bank. Just
Yeah.
sign up for 3 years. I went, oh, all right. So I signed for 3 years. And here we are,
Mm.
27 years later
Yeah.
or 30 years later. And they just keep extending the contract, extending it. So who knows? I'll be 77 when my next year contract ends. So will they say, Alan, it's time to rest? I don't know. We'll see.
And how do you get, because how do you get better every year, like doing panto? Because each year you got to, you got to surprise the audience, haven't you? You've got to give them something
Yeah.
fresh and new. How do you keep doing it? What is
It's
it?
very, very difficult. I mean, um, I actually wrote last week, wrote a sketch for next year or for this
Okay.
year.
Mm.
And I've got notes on my phone that I just keep putting ideas down of there'll be about 20 notes there when I get to actually sitting down with Ed Curtis, who's the director and writer that I write with. There'll be 20 notes there. Four of them we will use. The
Yeah.
other ones will go into next year's lot and probably won't use them then. But again, with it being such a big company, they'll come to me and they'll say, look, there was a routine that went particularly well in Birmingham this year. So
Yeah.
we're going to adapt it, make it Scottish, make it work for you, as because it might have been done by Buttons last year. Now
Yeah.
we're going to make it work for Auntie May. So we inherit some sketches from around the
Yeah.
country. Some of them work, some of them don't. But as soon as they don't work, they're out. If they're not working in the first two shows, it's out. We did a massive routine last year, which involved flowers, hundreds and hundreds of flowers all over the stage. Took took 4 or 5 days to rehearse. We did it the first night, and the director came down and went, "It's out. It's not on." So all that magic that went into getting these flowers on the stage and all that, we know it's not for us, it's gone.
Yeah.
So we know what the Scottish audience wants, and we know to get rid of it if it's not working. So
And
as
how?
I say, every year I write a parody, maybe two parodies every year. I'm one parody ahead because I wrote one for last year that hasn't we didn't use, and that's I think we'll use it this year. That's to my way, but it's May's way. I did it May's way.
Yeah.
So that's written, ready to go. Probably,
Yeah.
maybe we won't use it. Let's see what happens.
No, 'cause I love because I make a point of going to the Palladium every single year to see Panto, and it is such a thrill to sit in a really iconic venue that all the big names have performed at and watch Panto. I mean,
Unbelievable. I mean, that
the,
production this year was jaw-dropping.
it was.
Everything about it was sensational.
I mean, it's probably I mean, I've seen a few now. It's probably Robin Hood was the funniest one that I've ever seen them do. I mean, Julian Clary and
Brilliant.
Jay McDonald.
Yes.
It's a partnership you didn't think would work,
Yeah.
but it worked, and
It
then
worked
bounced.
better than anything. I think his
Yeah,
his partnership with Jay McDonald was better than he's had with Don French or with
yeah.
what's her name 2 years ago? Hook. Forgotten her name.
Oh, Jennifer Saunders.
Jennifer Saunders. Yeah,
Yeah,
that didn't work as well as this. This worked perfectly. The way she looked at him, the way he looked at her, and all the stuff about the whippet and all that stuff.
but I think she's got quite a similar sense of humour. That naughty kind of. I mean, not compared to Julian, but she's got that northern sense of kind of humour
Yeah,
that she doesn't.
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
And it just bounces off each other. It was thrilling, but it is such an honour to sit in that venue and watch Panto. And one day it may never be there, so it's kind of nice to be able
Yes,
to I've done it. I've seen Panto at the Palladium.
exactly. Yeah.
What? How early do you start thinking about panto? I mean, it's months away yet, but are you already planning?
I,
And I
I
know you're
am,
writing.
yeah. Well, as I say, I wrote a sketch last week, a routine which was based on something that we did this year, and I thought, oh, that could go into a proper routine. So I've written that, and as I say, by now I would probably have written a parody, but I've got one up my sleeve. So we'll see. I'm still always looking to see if there's something in the charts that would be good to do a parody of. So
Yeah,
I never stop thinking. It's there all the time. Panto, panto, panto. Let's come up with another idea.
yeah. And how long do you get to rehearse? Because how is it 3 weeks you get up in Edinburgh?
No, no, 10 days.
10 wow.
It's amazing. We put on a major musical in 10 days. You couldn't do it if you didn't have a team like we have. I mean, everybody knows everybody. The theatre is so sharp in what they do. It would, if you went to a new theatre, it would take them 4 days to get the tech side of it done. The
Mm,
guys just do it like that. Bang. They're on, the set's off, everything's
yeah,
moved in. They know how to do it. So there's that along with the backstage. There's my dresser who's been with me for 15, 17 years or something like that now. She knows how to get the costumes ready. She knows all the quick changes. It's a team that puts this show on in 10 days. Other than that, it would be 3 weeks under
yeah.
normal circumstances.
Mm. So do you design your own costumes or are they provided for you?
No, I come up with an idea. We found a style that suits me. So I'll
Mm,
speak to the costume department in
yeah.
Scarborough, which is part of Crossroads,
Mm,
and they've got a massive department there. They'll find me some dresses that I've had from maybe 6, 7 years ago that they keep just for me, so they're in pristine condition. And we might recycle things or zhoosh them up a bit, and maybe about 2 or 3 new costumes every year. So I spend time with them, talking to them, but I don't design them myself.
no. And what would you say is the most important part of panto that you've got to get right every year to keep that audience hooked? Is it the comedy, the music?
Definitely the comedy, the rapport we have, we break that fourth wall every single well, for within 2 minutes. I've broken the fourth wall and I'm talking to them,
Yeah.
and I'm down in among them. For the first time this year, I brought a woman up on stage and we did a magic trick with her.
Okay.
So I got to use all the lines, all the stuff that Julian does with somebody in the front row, all the stuff that I've done with people in the audience before. I put them all into one routine, and we did a supposed magic trick.
Mm,
And again, that was a bit hairy at the beginning, but once we got everything in place, every night I loved it because the danger, you never know what the person's going to say when you bring them up. You never know if they're going to do it right or if they're going to mess it up. So it was dangerous every night, and I loved that danger.
mm. I
You
saw
you probably
as in
saw
Bristol.
the camera. Julian put the camera in the
Yeah,
audience this year. Well, we've done that 2 or 3 times.
yeah.
And that's again very dangerous because you never know what somebody's going to do when you
No.
put the camera on them.
Yeah, well, I saw Brian Conley do panto in Bristol this year, and it's the first time I've ever seen him. But it was literally like watching a master of his craft. I mean, it was the
Definitely.
most phenomenal performance I've seen in panto. And he brought a screen on and did the camera and
Yeah,
brought
yeah.
stuff up on stage. And you could just, it's one of those performers where I felt safe watching him
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
you knew he knew what he was doing. I've seen certain shows where you watch them and you're like,
Yeah, danger. Oh, this is too
yeah,
much. I don't like this. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But with him, you just felt, yeah, he knows what he's doing. And it was
Definitely.
just
Yeah.
thrilled to watch him.
Mm.
Is there a panto that you'd love, or it could be any title in any theatre, but what would you like to do as a panto with anyone, dead or alive?
Do you mean the name of a panto
Yeah,
as
you could do
such?
any panto in any theatre with anyone. What would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I the best panto is Cinderella, which was the first panto I ever did, and the one we did last year. It is the best panto. Everybody knows the story before they walk in the door. Everyone knows what's going to happen, but you can find little ways of making it different, making it work. But the magic is there in Cinderella. The little girl looking up at that Cinderella and watching her transform from being
Yeah,
the downtrodden little girl into the princess is the most magical moment.
yeah,
Now, it happens a little bit in Snow White, it happens a little bit in Aladdin, but not to the degree that it happens in Cinderella. So if I could do one panto every year, it would be Cinderella.
mm,
But obviously, we've got to change every year. Not this year coming, we're doing Jack and the Beanstalk this year. Next year, when we go to the Kings, back to the Kings again, which has been, we moved from there for 3 years for refurbishment.
Yeah.
We're going to go back with one called Pinocchio, which I have never seen. I don't know
Oh
anything
yeah,
about.
you. Yeah.
So it will be very interesting to see how that story evolves and how that panto evolves. I'm a bit wary of it, I have to say, because I don't know where the magic
Because
is.
Michael's done it a couple of. It's been Michael Harrison's done it a couple of years now. So I did wonder when it was going to Edinburgh actually
He did it in Newcastle and he did it in Bradford.
this year.
So seemingly it's great and it's gone down very well.
Yeah.
So but
I think
we'll see.
Belfast have it next year. I think it's their turn for
Yeah,
Pinocchio.
yeah.
No, yeah, it does
So
look.
I'm not a big fan of finding very strange subjects. I wasn't knocked out with Beauty and the Beast. I didn't particularly like that. But it
No.
was again, listen, Auntie May is Auntie May, so no matter
Mm,
what Pat was saying, she basically does the same stuff, not the same gags, but the same
yeah,
feel to it, you know. So yeah, so it doesn't really matter as far as Auntie May is concerned. She just goes out and she's
yeah,
either the mother or the fairy godmother or still Auntie May every time, you know.
yeah. So last year you did Wizard of Oz as the wizard. What was it like going back into musicals? Like, was it a thrill
Well, it
to
was
do?
great because it was a very, very strict
Mm,
part. There was no room to ad lib or be funny or even change it. I did exactly what Gary Wilmot did and what Alex Bourne had done and what everybody had done in Michael Crawford. So I did exactly the song,
yeah,
exactly the routine. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that it was regimented. It took me such a long time to learn the song. I
mm,
had a long time to learn. I'm terrible at words, so it's a massive, massive deal for me to learn something. But I've proved over the years that
yeah,
that's that's just the way I do it. I have to do it that way. It might take me 3 months to learn it, but I do learn it. So I
yeah.
get there in the end. But it's a big, big, difficult job for me.
Yeah, because we're theatre I work at, we had a panto over Christmas, and one of our ensemble members did Wizard of Oz last year, and he
All
said he had,
right.
his name was Adam Craig. He was the
All right, an ensemble. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
did ensemble last year, and he said he had a fantastic time doing that show. Yeah, he
It
loved
was
it.
great. It was wonderful. I think it went on too long for all of them. The ensemble were very tired and very weary by the
Yeah,
time we got to London. We did the Gielgud theatre, not the Gielgud,
Gillian Lim, was it?
Gillian Lynn. Yeah,
Yeah.
we did that, and that was great to be back in the West End again.
Mm.
So I think everybody by the end of it was very, very tired and had had enough because I mean they had done something like 242 shows or something like that. Dates, weeks, you know, it was an incredible amount
Yeah,
of tour. Anyway, I didn't do as many as that. I was just nipping in and out. I had the perfect situation. I did some in Scotland, I
yeah.
did some in England, and I was on and off, and then I was away doing something else, and then I come back and do it. So it was great, great, great year for me.
Yeah. So as well as Panto, obviously you've got that Panto at the end of the year, but what's next for you? Have you got anything lined up that you're looking forward to?
No, I just work.
Yeah.
When I'm not doing panto or theaters, I'm doing the ships. So I go back to doing Cunard and Royal Caribbean, and I do my act. So throughout my life, the act has been the mainstay. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I'm doing television, I'd go back and do the act. I'm
Yeah.
doing panto, finish it, go back and do the act.
Yeah.
So the act has been the solid part of my life for 60 years. I did a
Mm.
show in Edinburgh, Alan's Big Variety Show. And that was, I did 60 years. That was 4 years ago. That was 60 years in the business we did.
Wow.
So that was then. So I'm coming up to my 65th year. I might do another big show when we go back to the Kings in 2
Yes.
years' time. I don't want to do it in the festival. I want to do it at the Kings. So it'd be lovely to do the last big show at the Kings. So let's
Yeah.
see what happens in 2027.
Yeah. Is it nice doing cruise ships? 'Cause I know a lot of people who do it. It's a tough old gig, but do you like kind of, it's not, it must be nice seeing the world and getting to do your act at the
Well,
same time.
listen, I love doing the act. I
Yeah.
don't like being on the ship. I've had enough of being on the ship. I did my first ship in 1971.
Yeah.
I do not want to be in a ship. I don't want to see Barcelona or Marbella again or any of these places. I want to go on, do my
Yeah.
show, and get off. And it's
Mm.
very difficult to get cruise ships to know that. They say, come on, do 7 days. In
Mm.
that 7 days, you do two shows. And everybody say, wow, that's fantastic. So you live as a
Yeah.
passenger in a beautiful cabin, eating all the great food, and then you do your show. No, I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
want to go in. I want to do my show and I want to get
Get
off.
off. Yeah.
I've done all the cruising that I want to do in my life. So it's very difficult. And
Yeah.
only some cruise lines allow me to do that. Other ones just say, no, we want 7, we want 8, 9 days. And I
Yeah.
say, no, I'm not doing it. So
Mm.
I've earned the I've earned the right to pick and choose now. I just do exactly what I want to do. And if they don't want me to do it, well, that's not my
I suppose
problem.
it's quite nice to be able to pick and choose what you want to do because then it's kind of
Uh,
feels like your own thing. Also, when you first
Yes.
start
I've
out,
always been very lucky. Again, one of the things my dad said, you've always got to have money,
mm,
enough money so that you can say no to something, because the power of no is the ultimate. You just say no, I don't want to do it, and they'll go, well, why not? I say, because I don't want to do it,
mm,
and that's the way I've always been. I've never, I mean, there was one time when I was working for a cruise company and they weren't treating me as I wanted to be treated. I wasn't getting the right cabin. I wasn't getting the nights that I wanted to work, all these sort of things. So I
mm,
said, okay, I'm not doing it. Now they came to me for 4 years and I said no. Now I could have done with doing it at the time.
mm,
I had two kids and I needed all the money I could get.
mm,
I was living in London. I just moved to London, all these things. But I said no, 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 no for 4 years. And eventually an agent come along and said, right, they want you back. I said, well, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I want this. And they said, okay. So I went back under my own terms. So I was willing to cut my nose off to spite my face in those days just to get what I wanted. And I'm still the same. I will cut my nose off to spite my face. I'm my biggest enemy. I'm my biggest own enemy. Is that what the saying is?
it is, yes,
That's
yeah.
what I am.
So one final question: what is your advice for anyone wanting to get into this industry? Because it's a tough old gig, and it's not what it always seems. What's your one bit of advice?
Well, they talk about 10,000 hours. The Beatles did 10,000 hours, they say, before they actually hit it. My son did his 10,000 hours sitting in his room writing every single day of his life. New songs, nobody interested, nobody interested. Then a little glimmer. Oh, as a young girl likes one of your songs. Then he got 3 or 4 songs with her, and then he did an album for a French girl, and money started to dribble in. And then it was like I could see there was light at the end of the tunnel at this point. He'd been doing it for 10 years, getting nowhere. And then at the age of 31, bang, the first big hit. What a Man Got to Do for the Jonas Brothers. Then within 3 months, bang, Dynamite for BTS, which became one of the biggest global hits ever. And now he's living in LA. He's got his recording studio in LA. He's got a recording studio in London. He's got a flat in London. He's got a house in London. It's become so big, but he did his 10,000 hours. So whatever anybody says, go and work in anywhere you can. A horrible little pub doing 10 people, the Edinburgh Fringe working to 14 people. Do it the next year, do it the next year, and just keep going. Your audience will build. You'll be 10, 15, 20, 50 people. Then people start booking, and you all of a sudden you sell out a 50-seater, and you just keep going. That's the only answer to it. If you give up, well, some people say, I've got to give up because I can't afford to
Yeah.
live in the breadline anymore. I've got to get a job. And that's where it all finishes, where you say, I can't do it anymore. And that's fine. You've realized you've tried everything. But generally, if you keep going, you'll find a door, maybe a back door, but you will get in eventually.
Look, Alan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much once again for agreeing to do this. Good luck with everything. Hopefully, at some point I'll get up to Edinburgh to see the panto because it's
Yeah,
one
please.
panto.
We'd love to come and
Of
say hello and come back
yeah,
and chat to me again.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Lovely
Have
talking
a
to you,
great week.
Colin. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.